That sometimes the eternal purpose cannot be perceived in the temporary circumstance. And that's why you have to be able to trust God and say, Lord, I thank you for this. I thank you for this. I'm in a place in my life right now. It's not because I'm so smart. I'm a fourth generation preacher. And my great granddaddy, he didn't have all of that much. And his daddy didn't have all of that much. And his daddy didn't have all of that much. But they had a relationship with God. And where they served as what we call circuit preachers, and went around to different churches, because in small country towns, you didn't have an every Sunday church. You had some churches that were once a month. And you could pastor 4 different churches, 4 once a month churches, and others had a first and third, and then a second and fourth. Oh, but preacher he was doing well when he'd go over here first and third and come over here second and fourth. He didn't have to have 2 messages anyway, because he was doing it. When he gave over here first and third, he was doing over here second and fourth. He had the whole thing going. And these were those kind of preachers that served God with faithfulness and humility of their heart and the integrity of their heart. And I'm convinced today that I'm blessed today. There's some things because of the sacrifices of my forefathers, that there were some things that the enemies did to them. They didn't get paid what they were worth, but God's paying it to me. Somebody paid the price. I am reaping stuff that my great-granddaddy sowed into my life and for my destiny. You don't ever know what you're doing. And that's why you cannot understand the purposes of God by looking at anybody's life in just one generation. God is too big. His ways are beyond our finding out for us to be able to try to capture God and understand God in just one generation. He has to be understood in the generation. He is the Ancient of Days. It is better to have the wisdom of the ages than it is to have knowledge of the moment. I'd rather have the wisdom of the ages with me. That's why he can only be understood as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God gave Abraham a promise, but if you judge whether God fulfilled the promise in the life of Abraham alone, you would have said that God lied, because God told Abraham, said, look up, count the stars, so shall your seed be. And he didn't have but one child of promise. One child. You can count one. And if you wanted to include the wild one, Ishmael, 2. Okay, 2. But that's not innumerable. That's not incalculable. You can count them. God said, Abraham, look up, so shall your seed be. He had one son of promise and then a bastard child. But then his son, he had one son of promise. His son Isaac had 2 children, Jacob and Esau. And then Jacob had 12. That's where the nation was born. So God gave it to his grandson. The promise was given to Abraham, but it wasn't manifested until his grandson. There's some things that you cannot see the faithfulness of God until you look at the generations. You've got to look at the generation. And that's why God will bless grandchildren with good jobs, even though when they were knuckleheads and they might have gone in for the interview, half high, drunk from partying all week long, hadn't been living like anything, shacking, fornicating, smoking weed, hallucinating, doing all kind of crazy, stupid stuff, and God will bless them with opportunities because somebody paid the price for you that was ahead of you. I've got a friend of mine that pastors right down the street from Rick Warren, and he would drive by Rick Warren's church with 20,000 members, drive down to his church with 2,000 members, and he would just get jealous and just wonder, God, why have you blessed this man with all of this? And I'm struggling down here in the street. I've got 2,000, he's got 20,000. He said the devil told him to put a sign on the back of his car saying, follow me to preferred parking. And then lead people down the street to his little church. But then he told me that he drove by that church one day and he heard the voice of the Lord say to him, this man is a 4th generation preacher. He says, how do you not know, if you will be faithful to me in your generations, what I will do in the lives of your great, great, great grandchild? And see, too often we are looking at what God is doing and what we can give thanks for through a bird's eye view of the current circumstances of where we are. When God sits on the circle of the earth, he is the God who was, who is, and who is to come. And it is all, God doesn't live in tenses. He's eternal. So he is not subject to time. God does not live in time. He manifests in time, but he himself is outside of time. So when God wants to bless somebody, if he puts the blessing here and if it manifests here, I bless them. I planted the seed here and the harvest came here. You don't ever know what God is doing in your life. You serve God in the faithfulness of your generation and you watch what God will do. You watch what it might not show up in your life, but it will show up in the life of your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, I'm just telling you, God sits on the circle of the earth and he's got something. He sees something that you cannot see. Gifts and dreams and vision, and you will think that God shortchanged you and he didn't fulfill this. And you had a desire for this, and you see it in your child. You see it in your grandchild. You see it down in somebody that you mentored along the way, and God says, I'm going to multiply what I put in your heart.